We are everywhere. Like we've built amazing houses, we are, living good lives. We are everywhere, but we are not inside our body. My purpose is strengthened even more to, not let human life be affected. Because when you lose someone, you're not just losing that person, the entire family gets deeply impacted. We cannot generalize men and women. They work
Very
different. So intermittent fasting is something that definitely works much better for men as compared to women because they don't have a 30-day hormonal cycle. But we actually inculcating more deeper work to understand where my eating pattern is coming from. Just like we spoke about tea or coffee, sugar cravings, there are obviously deeper ways, deeper layers that we need to uncover to understand that, okay, if I like eating fried food, where is that liking coming from? Is
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Soumya Prakash. Have you ever felt that even after taking 8 hours of sleep, you don't feel fresh? You feel the fatigue, you feel the tiredness all the time. You always feel the stress without any reason. You feel lack of focus and brain fog all the time. And we always feel that there is something which is external. Maybe our boss, maybe the stress of the job, or maybe something else which is external. But what if it is something which is inside us? Something which is calling you that it is high time that you stop living in autopilot mode and you start living consciously. You start living for yourself first and then help others. So today's conversation is all about that what is causing us this stressful life? Why we are depressed, why we are not happy, why we don't feel happiness at all, even if we have so much of convenience around us. So today my guest is Namrata Manayal, a clinical nutritionist who helps people break free from fatigue, stress and unhealthy patterns, not through extreme diets but through simple sustainable changes that actually work in real life. If you are someone who feels low in energy, you feel drained and feel the brain fog all the time, then this conversation is going to be very important for you because this conversation may be a wake up call which you never thought you needed. Watch the video till the end because it might change the way how you live. So I'm very excited to invite Namrata Manyal on today's podcast. Thank you, Namrata, for taking out time and joining me today for today's podcast. Welcome on my channel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and have this conversation.
I would first like to know your journey, why you chose nutrition as your career.
Oh, that's interesting. And it goes way back in time, actually. I clearly remember I was in the ninth grade, and there we had one chapter in the Science 2 textbook that was food, nutrition, and health. And I was always, like since I was young, I was always very interested in the medical field and understanding how the body works and, how these things happen. How does someone fall sick? And then how do we treat the person? Like all of those things really interested me. But I wasn't very pro to like, join the medical industry, like, MBBS or something of that sort. And when I read that chapter, Food, Nutrition, and Science, it spoke about what nutrition does to your body, what are the right kind of foods, and how that is impacting functioning of a human body. And I got very interested. From there, I started reading more on nutrition, and I've always been a reader. I love reading. So I started reading more books, more blogs. At that time, it was all about blogs and not really like video format too much. So I was reading all of that and I started making like list of colleges. And in my city at that time, there were just two colleges that offered bachelor's in nutrition. And I was like, okay, this is my target. After 10th, I have to enter this. And then through a series of events, unfortunately, when I was in the 12th standard, I lost someone very close to me, my maternal aunt. And we lost her to a chronic disease. So on paper, it was the chronic disease, but because I knew her personally, I knew how her life was and how nutrition, food, eating habits, all of these things ran in the family. And it wasn't just the illness that ran in the family, but these patterns, these behaviors that ran in the family. And then my journey actually started towards mindful nutrition, towards looking at nutrition from not just a very structured perspective or a very conventional way of looking at it, but also deeply understanding the role of stress and the role of different life events that impact our food habits and then therefore our health. And sometimes even life events can directly impact your health if you have an underlying issue, which is how I came into this field. It's been 8 years now, and every single day, when it's like when I see someone showing any improvement in their blood reports, in their body composition parameters, every single time, my purpose is strengthened even more to not let human life be affected, because when you lose someone, you're not just losing that person, the entire family gets deeply impacted.
Impacted.
And I
So
have seen
sorry
that
to
pain.
hear that
Yes,
you had to go through that pain.
yes. No
So my
problem.
next question is, Namrata, if you have to break one myth regarding the way we eat or whatever we eat, what that would be?
That we need a diet structure or more food rules. We don't need more food rules. See, normal eating is supposed to be very uncomplicated, very easy, very simple. Not
Right.
something that makes you feel more overwhelmed, not something that makes you feel more burdened. Otherwise, then eating itself becomes a source of stress. Like you're trying to manage stress for other things, but then you're adding stress to eating. And
Right.
every single day, a new product is launched, a new trend is over. Sometimes it's like, okay, carbs are bad, carbs are good, fat is bad, fat is good. New researches keep coming up. So you don't need more trends, you don't need more rules. You just need to start listening to your body and understanding the basic functionality of your gut, your hormones, or whatever it is that you are going through, and the targeted nutrition for it, and simplify things instead of overcomplicating it.
So true. Next thing I want to ask, Namrata, is that as I told you, I worked in corporate for more than 13 years. Even during my 20s, I felt that even after taking 8 hours of sleep, or maybe sometimes little more than 8 hours, I still always felt very tired. So,
Hmm.
what is the reason for that?
Firstly, it's the quality of sleep that is more important. I know there's a lot of say, and a lot of people ask me, what is the ideal sleep duration? Can we sleep for 5 hours? And is that okay? Like 6 hours? And especially for working population, it's very difficult to get more than 6 hours of sleep. Sometimes people are running on 4 hours of sleep during a stressful week. More than the quantity of sleep, it's important to focus on quality of sleep. So you can have deep sleep and the REM sleep, which is not the deep sleep, right? Which is basically, so if, for example, to simplify this, if you're like taking a quick 30-minute nap in the afternoon, you're still sleeping, but
Right.
you're not in a deep sleep, which is great for like recharging yourself, processing your emotions, certain non-vivid dreams. That kind of a sleep is great, but the nighttime sleep, which is for a longer duration, is something that gives you deep sleep where your body then starts feeling energized. It's also very important to understand that what you eat right before sleeping or your timing of your last meal plays a very important role in the quality of sleep that you get. Because if your body is continuously digesting food while you're sleeping, it does not have time to eliminate the toxins. So we are physically sleeping, but internally at night, the toxin elimination is happening. Whatever we've accumulated in the body throughout the day, years, months, whatever, in the form of different medications or excess energy or even external environmental pollutants, these are all getting eliminated through the digestive system and liver while we are sleeping at night. So, if for any reason our quality of sleep is disrupted, that is when the toxin elimination is getting blocked, which is why we may not feel energetic because the body was not able to do its job that it was supposed to do at night. And that's why a lot of people feel, that even after 8, 9 hours of sleep, even over the weekend, sometimes, people try to like just catch up on their sleep. Even then, they're like, oh, I'm still so groggy and still so tired when I'm waking up. People have puffy eyes or start developing dark circles all of these things happen because of your quality of sleep not being right for various reasons. I think one major reason nowadays that I'm noticing is people scrolling, like, scrolling till their eyes shut, like literally to that extent. Like they can fall asleep if they want to, but they just want to scroll, and that dopamine rush, that is also impacting the quality of sleep so much.
So true. And as you were talking about eating habits, so what is more important, what we eat or when we eat?
It's both. And in addition to that, it's also why are we eating? Because a lot of times we either like try to rush our meals, right? Which is, say we
Especially
have a call.
professionals, if you will
Yeah,
see, they will rush through their meals, or they are not very consciously taking their breakfast,
yeah.
especially breakfast.
Breakfast especially. I've also seen lunch, like lunch happening in between meetings, or sometimes if there's a meeting at 1, the lunch happens at 4. So it's a lot to do with the timing also, of course, because that's going to come in way of your digestive system. And secondly, it's also why of eating, because sometimes you may not be eating proper meals and then you keep munching. I've also seen a lot of people keeping like, some snacks on their desk. And then in between, if it's like, something like, you're creating a report that is very stressful to you, you'll just pick that snack up and you start munching very unconsciously. It's a very autopilot response, like it's a mind muscle connection that's created that, okay, I'm stressed now, so let's reach out for a snack and eat. So it's also very important to understand the why of eating. Am I eating out of physical hunger? Am I eating out of stress, boredom, or any other kind of emotion? To not feel the emotion, sometimes we stuff ourselves with food and even substances a lot of times, like the breaks that people take in between stressful meetings for tea and cigarettes, even that is coming in way of our health. So it's not just about what you're putting on your plate, but also why are we eating at specific times. I've also seen this that for many people, the first half of the day is very sorted. Breakfast and lunch is like very sorted. And then, once it's like 5 p.m., 6 p.m., that's when, people say this that I mess up in the evenings. And then
Yes.
this whole guilt around it that, oh my God, I'm messing up. Why is this happening? But if you just slow down and give yourself like a 5-minute break at 5 p.m., instead of reaching out to snacks and munching or having cups of tea or coffees, your dinners will be sorted because now you're well fed. Your dinners will be sorted, your sleep will be sorted, and then that vicious cycle will end. So it's like what you're eating, why are you eating, even how much you're eating is important. And of course, your meal timings are important. So all of these come together as a complete package. We can't isolate one thing and look at it in isolation.
Does intermittent fasting actually helps, or
Yes.
it is just a fad?
So it does help, but you have to do it right. Okay. And there's also this very important thing to understand. Whenever we talk about food and nutrition or health in general, we cannot generalize men and women. They work
Right.
differently. So intermittent fasting is something that definitely works much better for men as compared to women because they don't have a 30-day hormonal cycle. Their hormones nearly remain stable for some years of their life. And then at the age of 40 or 50, that is when their hormonal transition begins. But from puberty till that age, their hormones are nearly standard. They don't fluctuate as much. But if you look at women, they go through different life stages, especially if a woman goes through pregnancy, lactation, like they're going through different phases of their life every few years. And besides that, we have a 30-day hormonal cycle. And when we consider the menstrual cycle, we have to understand that there are certain phases where long hours of fasting are not going to be beneficial. They are going to be counterproductive, in fact. Even if you're considering things like postpartum or someone having thyroid issues or someone dealing with a lot of stress also in general, we talk a lot about, cortisol and stress hormones. Even for them, we have to be very careful. But when it comes to men, we can more easily start with a 14-hour fast and increase it to 16 hours. And for a few days in a week, say twice a week, we can prolong it to even as long as 18 hours of overnight fast. But it's important to understand that it's supposed to be an overnight fast. I've seen a lot of people having late dinners and then skipping their breakfast,
Right.
not eating up to like say 3 p.m. or even 4 p.m. sometimes. That is counterproductive. Firstly, it's not sustainable and it's also very counterproductive. So, how you are fasting intermittently, that's one important consideration, your timing of meals. And second, understanding your own body's physiology. Men hormones will be different and women's hormones will be different. So, it needs to be tailor made for them in that case.
This is such an important point because I haven't heard this from anyone. All the podcasts, all the people I know who talk about nutrition, food, I haven't heard this. A lot of people take these advice just because someone is saying without understanding that we all have different body.
Yes, yes.
So,
That's the first starting step always, that what is my body type? What is my hormonal profile like and metabolic profile like?
right.
Then the next step is okay, what will work for me then? But the first part we don't ever look into is what my body is like.
And my next question is how food, what you eat, and how much rest you take impacts productivity at work.
Oh, a lot. Because I think like this could be like, something that anybody listening to this can actually start noticing themselves, right? Like this is one step of coming closer to your body. When you're eating home-based meals, or even if you're eating from outside, but you're making better choices, how does your focus increase?
Right.
Or if you've had a good night's sleep, you're well rested, you've recovered, what is your focus like? What is your concentration like? A lot of people complain of forgetfulness and brain fog. It's become like a running joke these days that, oh, I'm 30 plus, so of course, like I forget things and, things like that. But
Right.
that's not when aging starts, right? 30 is a young age to talk about that I'm aging or my brain cells are depleting now and things like that. But when you see that if you're eating more, variety of foods, you're eating more fresh produce of fruits and vegetables, you have millets, and most importantly, nuts and oil seeds in your daily eating, your focus will increase. Because when you're eating, more, for example, refined foods or more processed foods, they are very high in the bad quality fat, which is omega 6. Everybody talks about carbohydrate, but very few people actually understand that bad quality fat has a bigger role to play in the depletion of your brain cells and how your metabolic profile changes. So, when you're consuming larger portions of those things, that is when you will see that okay, you feel more fatigued throughout the day, your body feels more heavy. You may not see any difference in your body fat percentage, but you just start feeling that the body is more sluggish, more tired throughout the day, and not able to focus on tasks, or not able to look into things with concentration. Another important thing, because we are talking about focus and concentration, is also this. I'm also seeing this running everywhere, that people are self-diagnosing ADHD just because they are not
Right.
able to focus on things. ADHD is an actual, you know, problem that needs to be diagnosed by a doctor. You cannot self-diagnose ADHD. Just because you're not being able to like pay attention to one thing for long enough, look at your screen time first. That's the most important consideration. Like, what is your screen time? If your screen time is anywhere over 2 3 hours and non-work related, I'm saying, definitely your concentration is going to reduce, because we are just scrolling, right? The dopamine, we are just scrolling. That's very important. Other important thing is look into like, what am I eating? Don't run behind what others are eating. What is the new diet trend? First look into, what am I eating? Is my meal wholesome? Is my plate colorful? Is it balanced? If not, then you know where your lack of focus or lack of concentration is coming from.
And how does this all is actually generating more stress and anxiety in the workplaces?
Yes. See, stress and anxiety, firstly, there are two ways of looking at it. One thing that we all have to understand is that stress is not the actual root cause of disorders, right? It is your response towards stress that really makes a difference. You may have a tough manager to deal with, you may have timelines to deal with, you may be having some personal life issues to deal with that you can't take away. These things are going to be there, they are a part and parcel of life. But how we respond to it is what makes the biggest difference, right?
Right.
Setting right boundaries, understanding, like, where am I supposed to invest my energy and not invest my energy? Having that clarity is very important in the first place. Secondly, when you are consuming a lot of, processed foods, convenience foods, if you are relying on those things, or if you're eating too little, because a lot of times, men and women start eating less if they are told to lose weight, or if they are told to work on their health, they just simply start eating less. That, okay, I have to cut down my calories, so I'll start eating less. That you're not, one big difference that people are not understanding, you're taking away calories, you're also taking away nutrition from your plate.
True.
And your body needs these vitamins and minerals to fight the stress. Because whenever your cortisol, that is your stress hormone, rises, your body is producing certain metabolic components which are very harmful. And this is what is then leading to, heart disorders, hypertension, your arteries getting blocked because of these metabolic products, the harmful ones. Now, when your nutrition is in place, your nutrition will bind to these metabolic products and throw them out of the system, all
Right.
your micronutrients and all these minerals. But if that is not on your plate, then there's nothing to fight these metabolic products. They keep creating more metabolic end products, leading to more stress. Whether it's a form of, acute chronic stress, so like traffic, delayed timelines, difficult conversations, whether it's that, or it's a metabolic stress that is just having, a higher blood pressure, a deranged thyroid profile, high lipids, high triglycerides is so common in our population now, or even borderline diabetes. Every second person I talk to has pre-diabetes and fatty liver. That is also a form of stress. So if
Correct.
you're not providing that nutrition, there's nothing in your body that can eliminate these harmful products, which is how nutrition plays a huge role in stress and anxiety.
And there is a lot of talk about gut health. So, how gut health impacts our mind?
Gut and mind are actually two organs that are connected to each other. There's something called as the vagus nerve, and that is what connects your brain to the gut. And your gut is like a mirror organ. So anything that's happening in your mind, in your brain, if you're stressed, if you're anxious, if you're in the borderline depression zone also, it is going to show up as gut signs first. So,
Okay.
sometimes we also see that, classic example is that if you have an important meeting or if you're running late, a lot of people face soft stools or they want to use the washroom immediately, which is like a very direct impact that we know, like, in that moment, you can actually understand how your mood or what you're feeling is getting impacted on your digestive system. And we also have enough studies to say that Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, these are things that actually begin in the gut. We've seen many patients suffering from Alzheimer's, Parkinson's in the later years of life, or even, early 50s or late 50s, which is a young age to have Alzheimer's or dementia, actually having chronic gut issues in their 20s, in their 30s. Which is how, and also in your day to day things, right? Like just constipation itself bothers people so much, your focus falls down even if you're constipated, even if you're gassy, even if you're bloated, you can't think anything else other than paying attention to what's happening in your digestive system per se. So there is a very direct communication through the vagus nerve between your gut and your brain, and this is a two-way communication. So anything in your gut, your brain is going to react to it. Anything happening in your brain, your gut is going to react to it.
And one more thing, as professionals, what happens is we take a lot of tea, coffee in between, and there is also talk about sugar, whether you should take sugar or not. So, what is your take on taking a lot of tea, coffee?
Hmm.
Does it really helps, or is it also a mechanism to just go through the stress. When you're going through a stress, you take a lot of these drinks, and sometimes it becomes very addictive also. For a lot of people, this becomes addiction. They
Yes.
want it very frequently. So, what is your take on all this tea, coffee, and sugar?
So tea and coffee are, actually substances that your system begins to rely on. Like people say that coffee gives you that kick. Like, it will just open your brain to start functioning again. Or even tea works the same way. Like a lot of people say that, oh, I can't operate without my cup of tea, which of course is an inbuilt mechanism that you've developed, right? So what your body actually needs is a breather. So if you've had like a very heavy first half of the day, by 4 p.m., 5 p.m., your system, your brain is tired of the information that you've, just thrown onto it right now. So you need a breather. You need to first understand that, okay, where is this habit coming from? Like, and it's so autopilot sometimes that people don't even count how many cups of tea or coffee they've consumed.
So
And
true.
a lot of times, like with tea, a lot of people would have the normal milk tea, but with coffee, so many people consume cups of black coffee without counting. And really, like, strong black coffee that they don't even realize how many cups have I consumed of tea or coffee. So, first is understand, like, observe first. Like, I say this to everyone that first begin with observation, because sometimes the problem may be small, but we think that it's very big. And sometimes it would be the other way around. The problem may be very big, but we think that, okay, it's very small. So if you're consuming like 10 cups of black coffee or 10 cups of tea a day, it is a problem that we want to, correct. But if we take it too lightly without even noticing that I'm actually consuming 10 cups of tea or coffee, then we won't take any action towards it, towards correcting that. So, first, it's important that you begin to observe that, okay, how many cups of tea or coffee am I consuming? Then, second level would be, what are the times when I'm reaching out for this tea or coffee? Is it like right after a stressful meeting? Is it right after I wake up? Is it at specific times of the day? And then you move to the solution part that, okay, if it is after the stressful meeting, so it's an autopilot response to deal with stress. What else can I do instead of reaching out for tea or coffee immediately? And it's very important to take a pause, right? So whenever you have this thing in your brain that, okay, let's go and have a cup of tea, instead of immediately taking action or reacting to it, take a pause and ask yourself that, okay, what else can I do right now to feel better? If I'm
Right.
stressed, how can I lower my stress right now? Maybe I can just go down for a walk. Maybe I can just, sit, focus on my breath. Sometimes, if you're very angry, just taking like a piece of paper and just scribbling on it to just vent out that anger also helps. So, these are different coping tools that you can start developing instead of immediately reaching out for the tea or coffee. Because your brain has now created a memory response. Stress. So, what will make me feel safe when I'm stressed is tea or coffee or sugar. Like, sometimes people have sugar cravings also. So that could also be one of the reasons. So then it's very important first observe. Second, see when am I reaching out for these things, whether it's tea, coffee, sugar, or even salty products. Like, sometimes people snack on chips and, just salty snacks when they are stressed. And then you look for solutions that, okay, these are the times. How can I begin to change my response and lower down? Having said that, it's absolutely okay to have 2 cups of tea or coffee in a day. And when we talk about sugar, it really depends on your metabolic profile. I don't really advise someone to go like fully zero sugar because that's very tough to sustain. Of course, you can look for alternatives like monk fruit or stevia to just get that flavor and texture, or even use like make like these date bars or use raisins and things like that as a natural sugar that you can replace with white sugar. But if you still want to like sometimes consume white sugar, as long as you are not going overboard with your portions, as long as the rest of your lifestyle is being maintained, there's no harm in consuming some amount of it, logically speaking, in those controlled portions and less frequently.
And what food can someone take to improve their focus and also to manage their stress and anxiety?
Very important food groups are nuts and oil seeds, which most of us often consume as random snacks. Like there are just some snacks kept, so we'll just pick them up and we'll eat them. There would be days when we will not eat them at all. But things
Right.
like almonds, walnuts, pistachios, even cashews, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, so these nuts and oil seeds are very beneficial in terms of helping you focus better, in terms of reducing your anxiety also. And have them preferably soaked and peeled, especially almonds, walnuts, pistachios, cashews. You can just simply have them soaked. And for oil seeds, you can either soak them, or you can just roast them and grind them, or just roast them and have it as it is. They also have a nice crunchy texture. Most of these seeds, like pumpkin seeds especially, have a nice crunchy texture. So you can even top it up on, like your salads or your curd, or add them to your gravies if you're making a powder of it. So that's how you can start incorporating these things. And second is more color, right? So your gut and your brain loves these colorful plates and your fruits and vegetables. So it's very important that you incorporate these seasonal fruits like papaya. Now mango is going to be in the season. So mangoes, and then like citrus fruits, melons, like these are the kind of fruits and vegetables. The more color on your plate, the better your digestion, the better your gut health is going to be. The better your gut health, the better your brain and heart health is going to be.
And what one should eat to build more stamina and endurance? Because in today's world, there is so much of stress. We have to travel also to the office. So, what can one eat to build that stamina, that physical stamina as well as mental stamina?
It's very important that you get the right kinds and quantity of carbohydrates on your plate, because a lot of times we go zero carbs. We are like just eating salads for weeks and months. When we get on this diet mood, sometimes people have these cycles that for 2 months they'll be on the diet, and then for 2 months they'll go all out and eat whatever comes their way. It's very important that you eat the right kinds of starches and carbohydrates for your stamina, because your brain can only use glucose, which is a digestive end product of carbohydrates, as a source of energy. So if you're going too low or even too high on your carbohydrates, it will either make you too sluggish, or it will just, make you feel like tired all the day, or lack of concentration and all of these things. So the right kind, that balance is important. Incorporate more starches, more millets. Even if you're eating rice, make sure you're pairing it well with good quality protein and fiber. So one is carbohydrate, and the second is going to be the right kind of protein, because all of us, especially vegetarians, are deficient in protein. In fact, in India, even non-vegetarians are a lot of times deficient in protein, because there are days of the week that we would follow, or some months where we avoid eating non-vegetarian for various reasons. So it's very important that you get your protein intake right. There is no harm in taking a supplement and using a good quality supplement as a supplement. So when I say that, I mean, if there are days when you know that through food it's going to be difficult to get your protein straight, use a supplement. Even if you want to use it on an everyday basis for months together, you can still do that.
Okay, and how important is hydration for human body?
Extremely important, not just because we're 70% water. I think everybody knows that. So what happens is that your blood is the supplier, right? Like it's supplying all the nutrients, it's taking all the end products from various organs, and then it's taking it to the liver, gut for cleansing purposes also. So while it's supplying nutrition, it's also clearing out the body from these toxin materials. If you lack hydration for any reason, this is going to be inhibited. So it's important that you first again track how much you're consuming right now, and find out innovative ways that you can increase your hydration. Many people don't like drinking too much water. So then you can incorporate lemon water, you can incorporate infused water, coconut water, anything that's liquid, even soups. So anything that's liquid and hydrating will come under this category, which would exclude your tea, coffee, alcohol, obviously, like because that will rather dehydrate your system. And even cola beverages, so you can't have like a can of diet coke and say that I'll add this to my hydration list. But focus on things that actually hydrate you and are liquid at room temperature. So that's how you can increase your hydration levels.
And regarding the audience of my channel, what I feel is a lot of people are students and some of the audience are professionals. So tell me a basic diet or basic routine a person should follow who is a student right now and focusing on their studies. And also for those who have a very hectic schedule but they want to have a healthy lifestyle. So what schedule should they inculcate in their daily life?
Right. So, firstly, like developing a schedule or developing your diet plan depends on various reasons. One, like your work hours, your study hours, your school hours, all of that. Second, you also have to understand how much time do you actually have to invest in the entire process, right? Making it a priority is obviously the first thing. You can't wait that when I have time, I will start doing these things. You have to make time for taking care of your food, your health, and your body. Otherwise, you will suffer in the future sooner or later. It's that sort of a thing. It's also very important to understand metabolic profile of people. These days we are seeing that things like hypertension, diabetes, fatty liver, they are starting in really young set of people. Even 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds are coming with fatty liver. So we have to first consider these three. And also, of course, fourth very important factor is your regional preferences. So we cannot generalize, that specific foods for specific regions, because we know that there are regions that are rice eaters, regions that are wheat eaters. So you have to understand that. But one basic fundamental that you can keep in mind is that always make sure that 50% of your plate is with vegetables. That's where your fiber, your phytonutrients are coming from. 25% of your plate is protein, which could be vegetarian protein, non vegetarian protein, whatever you prefer. And 25% of your plate is filled with good quality carbohydrates, which can be your starches in the form of rice, sweet potato, or your millets and these other things like wheat products, or millet incorporation. Now, this plate method can then be converted into any recipe, any cuisine that you would want to eat. Sometimes people like eating things like wraps, burgers, salads at home. So you have to make sure that you are getting all of these nutrients in place, even if it's a bowl of salad. A salad doesn't mean just vegetable. You have to incorporate the protein part also to it, right? So this is how you can make it simple. But it's also important that you plan your meals in advance, especially when we talk about if there are students who are living away from home and they have to cook their own meals, or take care of their meals by themselves, or if there are professionals who are again taking care of their meals by themselves, it's very important that you sit down and plan your meals, preferably on a weekend, because that's when you'll have more bandwidth to think about these things, so that then you have your grocery, you have your pantry set according to it. If you wake up in the morning, or if you wake up, like if you just go into the kitchen at 12 and start thinking, what should I make now for my lunch or my dinner? You are going to just make whatever comes your way, right? Because you're hungry at that time. You don't have the bandwidth to plan your meal. So you'll just check, okay, I have this bhindi ka sabzi, I'll just make like bhindi and roti, and that's it. So you're missing out on the protein element of it and not able to think innovative ways to increase your vegetable intake as well,
So
because people
true.
a lot of times can't eat that much vegetable, right? Like when I say 50% of your plate, it means a good 2 cups of vegetables that can go on your plate. But if I have, like, on a weekend, if I sit, I can get creative with the process, that okay, I can eat like 1 cup of sabzi and I can add, 1 cup of, say, boiled tudhi into my roti ka atta itself when I'm making the dough. So you get more innovative when you are sitting in that zone to plan your meals. So it's very important. Find time to create that kind of a meal plan for yourself, keeping these principles in mind. And then it will be possible for you to actually translate that into your real life instead of just it being on paper.
And in some of my previous podcasts, I've been talking about depression. That
Hmm.
a lot of people, even if they are earning well, they feel depressed, they don't feel motivation, and they are very not just low in energy. they don't feel that there is a purpose of their life. And as we have seen in newspapers, and a lot of people are also talking about this, that loneliness is something which could be the next pandemic. Do you think poor health leads to depression, and how it impacts our overall happiness?
Yes. So, health leading to depression or depression causing poor health. Again, it works both ways because when you're so depressed, I've obviously worked with a lot of clients who've dealt with that level of depression or anxiety. And I've seen that when they come in, like for the first few calls, they are not able to take care of themselves.
True.
Sometimes so bad that they can't sense their hunger. They would go like one entire day without eating a proper meal, and they wouldn't even know that they've not eaten a proper meal because they're so disconnected.
So true.
Why depression is increasing so much is because number one, we have forgotten to live our purpose, right? You may be doing a job, and that's very important, of course. Like doing a job is very important. You have to run your family, you have to run your house. But so much of our time and energy is taken up by our workplaces that we are not finding moments of joy in our entire day, which makes us feel very purposeless and very directionless. So, first thing is that you have to find out things that give you joy. Be like a child sometimes, like as kids we always have certain things, right? That okay, watching my favorite show gives me joy, this is my time to play out. Life was much simpler when we were kids, right? And
Right.
adults may say this, that life was much simpler when we were kids. But now we don't have someone, like a parental figure or a guidance to tell us that okay, your office hours are over, or now stop playing, go study. Like nobody's going to come and tell us these things. We have to start telling us these things by ourselves, that okay, I have done my part of the job. Now let's maybe go out for a run, maybe go outdoors. Being outdoors is so important because otherwise in the corporate world I've seen that you're in that building for like 16 hours, 18 hours of your day. You don't even look at sunshine, which is a
True.
very important factor for your mood. Like that is also like vitamin D deficiency is so common in people who are facing depression. You don't see the sunlight. You're going early morning, you're coming back late night, you're only seeing darkness, and that's what starts entering your mind as well. First thing is be like a child sometimes, like do things, create that, like be more creative in the things that you're doing. Like even if you're working, think about ways how you can make your work more creative and more fun, and find joy in the smaller things in life. Going out on a weekend for drinks with your friends is not giving you actual joy, it's just a distraction. It's not something that's adding more to your life, it's draining you. And also be more outdoors, like be more like with the sunlight, and have that kind of, in fact, anyone who is in that level at an organization, it's very important to for them to think of ways of how they can deliver this to their employees as well. Maybe like creating spaces and like setups, like office setups, creating these kind of spaces, or setting breaks for their employees. We talk so much about mental health in the office setup. It's important to create that kind of an infrastructure also for their employees, via which we can then lower down the chances of depression because of these reasons, which obviously will have a direct impact on their productivity also at work and in general for their life as well.
And Namrata, one more thing. As we were talking about health issues, diabetes, then there is cholesterol, and we have also been listening a lot of cases within our family members of cancers. What are the long-term risks that we are ignoring today, which is causing all these diseases?
One is definitely early life food habits, which now people of our age and generation cannot do anything about for us. But definitely for the next generation, we can start being more careful, inculcating practices of mindful eating from a young age, because your patterns and habits are developed from 0 to 6 years of age. So it's
Right.
very important for any parents watching this, lead by example, because kids are going to do what they see. I've seen a lot of videos online where, like they would just put like a piece of like a vegetable or something in a KFC ka dabba and then feed their child. Like you're trying to say that, okay, the child is enjoying something from outside, but not from home, which is because the child is seeing you enjoy that food and not enjoy the home based meal. So they feel that, okay, this is a moment of escape. This is like freedom. I can eat that, what I want to eat. So, first is early life exposure to the right kind of foods and balanced nutrition developing. Second is working on your eating habits and patterns, not just following diets or not just forcing yourself to follow any food rules like it is a punishment, but actually inculcating more deeper work to understand where my eating pattern is coming from. Just like we spoke about tea or coffee, sugar cravings, there are obviously deeper ways, deeper layers that we need to uncover to understand that, okay, if I like eating fried food, where is that liking coming from? Is it a habit that I've developed? Or is it a coping mechanism that I'm using? Why am I so inclined towards eating these foods? Because everybody has the basic general knowledge that eating processed food, deep fried food is not good for your physical body. So, definitely, there's some gap that we are not looking at, and we want to fill that in. So, instead of diets, understanding your eating patterns and habits, because that way you're not just targeting your physical health, you're also working on your emotional health and mental health. And of
True.
course, everything like whether we talk about diabetes or high blood pressure or even many cancers, they are rooted in all of these things. It's not just about the food, but also about your emotional health and mental health. We see a lot of people eating really nice food, and on paper they are like eating the perfect meals that one would, and doing their workout, sleeping well, but still having these kinds of metabolic abnormalities. So there's definitely something deeper that we need to start uncovering and facing truths, like say accepting that yes, this is a problem. I am inclined towards these foods for maybe emotional reasons or autopilot behavioral reasons. And it's important that I start working on them to prevent these disorders or even manage them better, walk towards remission from these disorders, and delay the relapse of these disorders as much as possible.
And if someone wants to transform their life from today itself, so what advice would you give to these people who really want to transform their life?
Number one thing is start taking micro breaks during your day. We are just jumping from one work, one task to another. A very simple way to get started with this is that whenever you sit to eat, take a pause before you eat. Because the general practice is that you're taking a meeting, you're doing some work, maybe you're studying or you're doing some work, and then you're just filling your plate, taking your plate, eating, and then again moving on. So there's no gap in between. Whatever you're doing, finish that task, wind that up, sit with yourself, even for 30 or 40 seconds. Sit with yourself, return to your body. We are everywhere. Like we've built amazing houses, we are living good lives, we are everywhere, but we are not inside our body, the
So true.
constant home that we have.
So true.
We're not inside at any hour of the day. If you see, people are feeling so disconnected, which is also a reason for higher cases of depression, because we're feeling so disconnected from within our body. It's like we are having either two bodies, or we are having that out of body experience, that what's happening sort of a thing. So it's important that you start taking these micro pauses throughout your day. Those 40 seconds, that 40-second break is also going to help you return to your body, focus on your breath, understand your hunger. Like it's also another important feature that we forget about. As kids, we always eat as per our hunger. We would never eat beyond. Like we call it fussy eaters, but they're just listening to their hunger, right? Like, of course, incorporating variety in their meals is a different thing. But when we talk about their hunger and fullness signals, they are very sharp in listening to them, because the society has not played a role yet, right? So they're listening to
Right.
their intuitive signals. But as adults, there's so much of noise in our head that we've stopped listening to those intuitive signals. So it's important that you pay attention to your hunger and fullness levels, be fully present when you're eating, and eat slow. One very like a technique by which you can start eating slow is like putting your fork down. So whether you're eating with a spoon or you're eating with your hand, just make sure that okay, while I'm eating one bite, I'm not preparing the next one, because that's the usual habit. Like these are very small things that we often don't pay attention to. So put your fork down, put your hand down, that okay, once this bite is over, then I will proceed to the next bite. Then I will start eating the next meal, by which automatically your pace of eating comes down. You're more present during your meals. So that's how you start developing mindfulness in your entire life. And then this effect that you're practicing now, you practice it only during meals, that will slowly and eventually ripple into all the other activities also that you start doing, which is how you become more connected with yourself, and you don't feel this, the pressure, the burden, the overwhelm, and sometimes you're feeling off but you don't know what's happening. So when you start
Exactly.
connecting with yourself better, you will have these answers, and that's how it will show up in your health as well, in your digestive health, your hormonal health, your sleep quality, your stress levels, your productivity. All of these things will start improving.
And let's have a little rapid fire. So, one question is one food everyone should avoid.
Everyone should avoid would be refined oils, definitely. Any kind of refined oils, whether it's in processed foods or even when you're using for cooking meals, refined oils.
One superfood you recommend.
Not such a superfood, but definitely be more mindful about your nuts and oil seeds, because that's something that we often don't consume. So be more conscious about incorporating them.
Biggest diet myth.
Oh, I think I already spoke about food rules. And I think, yes, food rules, definitely avoid, following any of these food rules. And also, secondly, like beyond that, because we've already mentioned that calorie count or paying attention to your BMI is meaningful. It's not meaningful at all in the long run.
One small habit that can change someone's life.
Uh, Pre-meal pauses and taking short, like 10 to 15-minute walks after all your meals, your breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Thank you so much, Namrata. It was really nice talking to you because I've been learning a lot. And I feel my personal opinion is from my own experience, what I've understood that we are actually living our life on autopilot. It's high time that we should be more conscious of what we are eating, what we are doing during the day, and we should, this is also part of our self love, that you take very good care of yourself,
Yes.
because first person for whom you're responsible is you yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, thank you so much for being on my channel, and thank you for giving so much of time and sharing your valuable insights on nutrition today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a nice conversation.